Welcome to another episode of Thoughts of a Trillionaire. um, and becoming a techno wizard. Um, I don't know what I'm going to call these in the future. Probably going to have to come up with a new name or something like that. So that if I keep combining my podcast with my YouTube videos, but I don't know. We'll see. But for this episode, it's going to be relatively short, maybe 20, 30 minutes, I hope. I have a lot of other work to do, so try to keep it relatively short. But wanted to give some updates as well as kind of work through some ideas I have for how to get our society to work more like those hunter-gatherer cultures that have been so successful for hundreds of thousands of years. With the fact that we can't really go back anymore, right? We can't just tear everything down and start over from scratch. You can't, live in the woods and stuff like that. We just changed the environment so very much, and we've changed ourselves so very much that it's that's just not really a possibility. So what I've been wondering and thinking a lot about is how can we transfer over those lessons, those wisdoms, those behaviors that they had into our current day society with our current day technology, with the purpose of making our current day technology and societal norms and you know institutions and so on and so forth more egalitarian, more peaceful, more healthy, more sustainable, all that stuff that those other cultures, those prehistoric cultures had. So before I get into all that, gonna give some updates on what I've been doing in my life, because this is supposed to be like a journal, not just of sharing my ideas, but also just sharing my life and my journey so far on this path to become a trillionaire or a techno wizard or whatever I'm trying to do. Really just live an interesting life and change the world while I do it. Anyways, um, I don't really remember the last update I gave or what I said, but I was looking through it through my podcast. I think that I tend to update that a little bit more than the YouTube, but it looks like the last update was in January. Quite a while. I'm not sure. I didn't listen to that back, so I'm not sure what I said there. But since January, I have secured a nice little job. You know, um, and it's pretty cool. It is not a full time position; it's more of a contract type of thing, and it is, as most contracts are. It's or not really most contracts, but with this contract is hourly. So based on how much hours I'm putting in, how much work is available at the agency will determine how much I get paid. But I am getting paid a good amount, like 3-4 times more than I've ever made before. So it is huge. It's huge difference, and I'm so happy about that. But I've only been working like maybe 10 to 15 hours, no, 12 hours max so far a week. So I'm trying to get that up, and it's looking like it will get up because we have a lot of projects coming in. We have working on right now. I can't say too much, I don't think, but I can say that we were are working on a emotional intelligence type of thing. Because not really one project. That's the thing. It's not really one thing, not just an app or a website, whatever. It's a whole suite of tools in the space of emotional intelligence, and that really interests me because I think that's super important. Creating more tools to help people become more self-aware, become more emotionally intelligent, um, and so on and so forth. That goes a long way towards my own goals of trying to unlock humanity's potential, to be more self-fulfilled, more self-actualized, transcended, whatever you want to call it, transhumanism or whatever, right? It's all under the same idea of helping us just be better people, be better creatures. So yeah, um excited about that. That's pretty cool. I also have my apprenticeship with Debbie still going on. That's kind of unfortunately very slow. I feel bad because I haven't been able to finish my part, helping her. develop this thing. I mean, partially it's also me because I'm supposed to be learning under her. Um, and I need to take more advantage of that. She's an incredible person, and she has so much to teach. She's always doing videos on her YouTube. Check it out, Delta CX. And yeah, I would like to take more advantage of that. Make sure I'm still always learning, because there's so much to learn about UX design, about design in general. Um, but in that space, I am learning, interaction design with her, as well as information architecture. So I'm building again, I can't say much about what exactly I'm building, but it's a tool for UX researchers. Let's say that. And currently building this complex data table where I have to figure out like multifaceted filters and sorts, and just a bunch of different like complicated things, and to make it a really customizable data table, because these people that's going to be using it are basically UX researchers, and they need to be doing a whole lot of things. So it's a lot to figure that out. And I'm using the Axure. So teaching, learning how to use Axure is been super great as well. There's a lot of very powerful features with that tool. So unlike Figma or Sketch or pretty much any other, prototyping tool, or rather design tool out there, Axure allows you to do logic-based prototyping. So you can put like if statements, panels. You can use like multi faceted panels, multi-state panels, so that when you click something, something happens, right? And then it can change something on another part of the page, and this part is so. I'm sorry, it's called dynamic panels. Goodness. So yeah, makes you can actually do dynamic interactions, unlike with Figma or Sketch, where you have to just copy the same artboard over and have a whole bunch of different artboards and this switch between the artboards. So yeah, Axure is a pretty cool tool, but it is very complicated, unfortunately. Mostly, I feel, and yes, it is because it's just a lot of complicated things you're trying to do. But honestly, I also feel like it's because the tool is not really made by designers. I feel like it's made by engineers, and engineers are awesome folks. They can create amazing things, but you can really tell when something is not made by a designer, right? When designers are not really big on that team, because they're making decisions that are like, why did you put that over here? You could have, like, if you did usability testing, right? If you did some user research, you probably would have seen that most people, and you can see this based on their forums, are complaining about the exact same thing. So if all these people are complaining about how this feature doesn't really make sense and how it should probably go here, or these interactions don't make sense, or how it's difficult to maneuver around and all that stuff, you don't have designers, right? You're not doing UX. So, and that's so like, I'm not sure if ironic is a good term to use, but it's so silly. Like, you're making a tool for designers, but you don't have, like, you clearly don't seem to have enough designers on your team. So, and that's really unfortunate. Because they're getting like left. I feel like they're getting left in the dust with people like Figma just popping out. So I'm wondering, like, what if Figma, eventually creates some of these logic-based prototyping? Like, will Figma ever go in that route? I hope so. I'm a fan of Figma. Um, like, I started using it during my boot camp, even when everybody was saying, "Oh, use Sketch. Everybody's going to be using Sketch." I'm like, Figma. And I was right, lo and behold. Not just a few months later, Figma started popping off like crazy. And granted, a lot of that was because of the pandemic, because people had to work remote. But it's just collaboration and the ease of use of Figma. Like, Figma is so easy to figure out, other than rather than Sketch. It's like there's a lot going on, and a lot of that stuff is like just doesn't feel like, once again, it doesn't feel like it's designed by designers. Figma does feel like it's designed by designers often. I mean, there are still some things there that's like, probably could have done better, but anyways, yeah, nerded out a little bit there, but suffice to say, like, that's a lot of what I've been working on, increasing my design skills. So learning interaction design, the fundamentals of interaction design, watching Alan Cooper a lot, a lot of his stuff, following a lot of great experts like Debbie, like Darren Hood another great expert. Also been reading the polar bear book. Basically, I talked about that before one of these videos, but learning a lot about how information architecture is just created, I guess, or the important parts of information architecture in terms of how to look at labeling, how to look at organization, learning the different types of architecture. So probably going to do a different video where I'm going through exactly what I learned from that book. Probably, yeah, I'm gonna do that. I'll go ahead and commit to doing that this week, because I'm like, what, 4 chapters in or something like that. um I'm not I'm not sure it was 4 chapters, maybe 3 chapters, about 100 or something pages out of 600. So you know yeah, it's a lot to learn there, a lot to talk about with that. So yeah, that's all of that. I haven't been working on my business plan too much, and I feel bad about that, because I once again I committed to that with the BTMP, the Black Technology Mentorship Program. But at the same time, it's not because like I'm lazy or whatever, right? Um, it's more so because I realize there's so much to learn about unlocking humanity's potential. And yes, I have a lot of ideas about this, and I have a good idea of how I want to start with this business. But I really, really, really do not want to go down the route of just building a business just because, right? Just building a business just because I have an idea, just because I want, money or something like that, right? I don't want to go down that route, because I feel like, and this is just me being ambitious, for a long time. Like I've always wanted to change the world for the better. I want to save the world, you know, together with other awesome people. And I feel like just building a business just because, you kind of go down a route of, let's make money, let's optimize, let's, grow, but you kind of lose focus on if you're actually changing the world for the better. You're more focused on, how can I grow my business, right? And those could be related, don't get me wrong, but we all see today what happens when technology gets big and scales, and it loses focus, right? Like with Google, the infamous, don't be evil, and they had to take that off. I mean, it's for a number of reasons, because first of all, and I was just listening to a podcast about this called Land of Giants. It's really great. But they was talking about how in the beginning, when they said don't be evil, it was around the idea of not, kind of catering the search to like certain media companies or whatever, or news companies, or political type of things, right? But it was very vague, right? Like, what is evil? What does evil mean? We think we know, but in reality, morals is very, it's not very, but it's somewhat subjective, right? The obvious stuff, like don't kill somebody, you know, try, lying is usually not good, stuff like that is kind of obvious. But even with that, like there's always, oh, what about in this situation, right? What if you're protecting someone, all this? So it quickly becomes subjective. And so when Google said don't be evil, it wasn't really clear of what that means. Like when you're making a decision at Google to say, how are we going to, improve the algorithm for search, right? How does don't be evil help make those decisions, right? And I'm saying this because this really impacts how I am thinking about making my business, right? Because I want to start from the beginning as early as possible, which is now, like before it's even started, thinking about my values, my ethics, my morals, and my vision, my goals, my plans with all of this, right? I just think not enough people take the time to really think about what they're going to do, if this becomes big. We like to think, oh, just go, right? Just hustle, just make it big, get your money, whatever. You can figure the rest out later. But we see today that that doesn't happen, right? Like if you don't take the time to sit down and figure out what your ethics are, it's highly likely that those ethics are going to be, lowered, or just skewed, or, just null and void, just not there at all, because you never took the time to figure out what the hell you're doing, you know? So that's what I've been trying to figure out. So to reiterate on what I'm doing for my business, basically, I want to unlock humanity's full potential by making it easier for people to figure out what they want to do with their lives and how to live their best life, right? I know that seems vague, and that's purposeful, because I think there's going to be different solutions towards that. The first solution I'm thinking is going to be related to research and curation, right? So, and that's this is another reason why I'm taking my time with this business. I've been just like, I just sit down and just think about like, okay, hmm, right. Right. And then just start writing stuff down. And then I would like listen to podcasts, and I would do some research, all that stuff. And then I will reiterate that process. And that's to make sure my mind is right going into this. Maybe I'm taking too much time for this. Maybe I'm overthinking it. That's just what I do. And I think I have to lean into that, because that's my strengths, right? That's what makes me different. And that's also something a lot of people won't do, because they don't see that as a good thing, right? So sometimes your strengths are your weaknesses, and your weaknesses are your strengths. You have to figure out what context that those are true. Like, what context is your strength, what context is your weakness, and vice versa. So yeah, anyways, I think research is going to be super important in this business. And I want to create almost like a research as a service type of thing, where um, people, user researchers, you have a team of user researchers, um, clinical people like psychologists, um, therapists, and so on, that those types of folks. And then coaches, like career coaches, executive coaches, uh, life coaches, stuff like that, where you have a team of these three people, doing research on your life, figuring out, okay, what do you want to do, what's going on in your life, what's your goals, what's your barriers, what's your pain points, and all this stuff. So they're actually sitting down and talking to you. Like, we don't have that today. Just that alone, I think, is super valuable, because, and it's just not, I think that I've asked other people, whenever I take the time and ask people, how are you doing today? Like, really, like, sometimes I just talk to people and just like, okay, how are you doing? Like, what's going on in your life? Like, for real. And people are like, I'm doing okay, this is going on, this blah 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 blah. And people just go on and on and on, right? Because that's just not done enough anymore. Because we don't have a sense of community like those hunter-gatherer cultures, which I'm gonna get to. And this is all, gonna tie in. But there's like an epidemic. Talk about epidemics, there's an epidemic of loneliness today, where you don't have enough people really caring about you, about your success, about your feelings, about your goals, your ideas, all that stuff. And that's really unfortunate. I think that creates a lot of problems in our world. I'm not going to go too much into that, because we all know, I feel like we all should know that. We all can just look in our own lives and see, I'm sure most of us have had moments where we felt like, oh, I wish I had somebody to really talk to about this problem or that problem or that problem, or even just goals or feelings or whatever, right? I'm sure most of us have had these things. So yeah, I think just having a research as a service concept will be very powerful. And that's a lot of what I've been thinking about for this business. The next portion is curation, is making it so that it's easy to look to find the best stuff on the internet or anywhere, right? And then give it to you. Again, that's something that's not common. Yeah, you can Google, but oftentimes if you don't know what to Google, then what you gonna do? You just Googling this, Googling that. You might go down some rabbit holes and find some things, but oftentimes, number one, a lot of that, you don't know what's verified. Like, you don't know what's good content, what's bad. You don't know what's facts and what's alternative facts, right? I like to say this. I'm pretty sure I said this before, but trying to find the right information on the internet is like trying to get a glass of water from that Niagara Falls, right? It's like, it just doesn't work. It's just just a deluge of crap, of stuff, right? I don't want to say crap because not all of it there's a lot of good stuff. But even with a whole bunch of good stuff, you don't know what applies to you specifically, right? It's really hard to figure that out. You have to work through this, you have to try this and try that. And I think it's kind of ridiculous that we think that's okay. Like we think that's the creme de la creme of the experience online. Like it doesn't make sense. I think yes, it is better than what it was before. And what it was before was like you go to a library and you're limited to what is just in that library. So if that library doesn't have books from around a certain topic, oh well, right? You never knew. You couldn't do anything about it, right? And yet, so I'm not saying like this is worse than what we were before, but with every scale of growth and with every step we take towards the future, towards progress or whatever, right? That comes with it a new realm of problems and a new realm of solutions that need to be built for that. However, what's also important to realize is that a lot of times those problems are not necessarily unique. Like those problems may have been had before in other situations, other societies, or other contexts, and some of those past solutions, some of those past ideas and things can be transferred, right? Transferable skills. Anybody that has made a resume about, especially if they have a long career or just or career switchers, career changers, right? You know that transferable skills are the bread and the meat of what makes you different, what makes your resume stand out, and what allows you to get jobs, right? Because you can say, oh, maybe I didn't work in this area, but I worked here and I learned this, that, and the other, and I can transfer that here, right? Making those connections between disparate things is what we call innovation. That's where a lot of creativity happens, when you make connections between things that don't seem to be connected. Okay. So I think we can do more of that with the internet and with really all of society today. Imagine somebody able to curate for you, you know, what, for instance, if you want to get a better job, right? Somebody can sit down with you and figure out, okay, what kind of job will work well for you. And instead of you having to waste the next 3, 5, 10, maybe even 20 to 30 years working in some job that pays well, sort of, but doesn't make you happy, doesn't give you purpose, doesn't actually give you any skills, any other skills, right? Instead of doing that, somebody can sit down with you and be like, okay, this is what your skills, this is looks like what your skills are so far. This is some of your characteristics. This is some of the things that you can have that you have a high aptitude for, that you can learn pretty quickly. You know, this is some of the things that will probably give you purpose based on your own dreams and visions and lifestyle so far. This is some of the things that will pay, and this is you see where I'm going here. Like people can sit down with you and figure out all these things. There is no algorithms, there's no AI that can do that yet. And that's another thing, that's what I want to build too. But you know people go a long way in helping other people, can go a long way in helping other people, and I want to create a service that makes that easier. So I've been thinking about a lot of that, and the bigger context behind all that is a realization that our society is broken in a lot of ways, right? If the fact that we have record high numbers of inequality, and this is like you can look it up. It's not just from the in terms of GDP either. It's in terms of the fact that the buying power, right? And this is well documented. The buying power of the average American has gone down or has stayed stagnant, which is basically gone down because everything else has risen, such as inflation and stuff like that, right? So we all, I mean, I shouldn't have to go into this. Like we all know that before you can buy fruit or comics or something like that, pennies on a dollar, but now it takes a couple dollars, couple hundred dollars for certain levels of you know um of resources. So, and then debt has gone up, is inflation in terms of medical costs, education and schooling, all these things. And it's just, it's not sustainable, right? And now we didn't even get into the environmental impacts. That's a whole other thing, right? So we know there's a lot of problems just in American society, right? And I'm starting with America because I live here, right? And America itself is just the 1%. Like it's such an unrealistic, such a, I'm not going to say better, but it is different than a lot of other places, right? Than a lot of than the types of lifestyles a lot of other people are living. So the problems we face is very drastic, but at the same time is not as drastic as the other people around the world. So if even, you know, and it doesn't have to be America, like you can look at any quote unquote developed nation, they all deal with some of the same problems with, um, inequality, with lack of access, which is related to the inequality problem, with bad education for for kids. And it's not just, oh, do you have free schooling a lot? Is does your education system teach people to be free thinkers, to be independent, to be self-sufficient and all that stuff, right? There's a huge problem with education. Medical problems, right? Even in the UK, where, or what, the Europe, where they pay for all your expenses, there's still a huge medical problem in terms of having a good dietary supplements, right? Having good diet, having a good um, range of resources, having a responsive immune system. There's a like, these are basic problems even in quote unquote first world countries, quote unquote developed nations, right? And so we have to we like to claim that we're so advanced today, and yet we still have some of the most basic issues. We still have, like, it's just so annoying that a lot of the it's propaganda, really. That's really what it comes down to, is the fact that many of us live in these, the fact that we even call it first world countries and developed nations, and yet we have these stupid simple issues. And I mean simple in terms of the fact that it's not like just pure privilege, right? It, like, even in America, you can very quickly go from having a home, having a car, having all this stuff before you, and live and going to the street, living on the street, becoming an addict, or, like, we haven't evolved that far. We like to think that we're so much better than the cavemen, or, where we were 1,000 years ago, or 10,000 years ago, or 20,000 years ago. And yet we still have the exact same problems of finding a place to live, getting good food to eat, safety, right? Like, why, if we're so advanced, why do we still have these exact same issues? That's my problem. That's the thing I'm trying to solve, right? So to get to these hunter-gatherer cultures, the common kind of thought about these cultures is that they were quote unquote primitive, meaning that, they, you might have heard, they had short lifespans, they had miserable lives, they had a lot of disease, stuff like that. Turns out all of that is false. Like, all of that is misinformation. In fact, a lot of the research shows that many of those findings, actually were actually misattributed to hunter gatherers, when they actually were from Neolithic, were from farmers, were from agriculturalists. So those people who had shorter lifespans, who had more disease, who had more warfare, all of that are agriculturalists, right? And I talked about this before, so I'm not going to go too much into all that. But suffice to say that there is a huge misunderstanding about the Neolithic Revolution, and that is the basis of our entire society. Anywhere in the world, right? There are only maybe a handful of hunter gatherer cultures left, and it's not because they failed. It's not because their way of life was unsustainable or because they were dying off or anything like that. It's because of us, right? It's because of the population of humans who started farming and agriculture and creating an extractive economy. Climate change actually started with the onset of agriculture, right? And it's obvious when you think about it, right? Because you had, in order to farm, you have to change the environment. You have to force the environment to do something that it doesn't already do. It has to, you're trying to make it grow food that it doesn't usually grow year after year after year. And that kills the soil, right? We know this today. Like any farmer will tell you that you can't do that anymore. You can't, right? That's a bad way of farming. And yet that's what we created. Again, I'm not going to go too much into this because I talked about it before, but I want to make clear that many of the like the downfall of our society, a lot of these problems started with that point. And I bring that up because now when I'm thinking about, okay, how do we create a better future? I have to think about, like, if I want to solve for equality, if I want to make a more equal world, more egalitarian world, then you have to think about, okay, so how did we, when do we have equality? Like, is it unrealistic? Like, is it unrealistic to be equal? you know, you have to ask these questions. Um, so as I started digging into it, looking at, okay, when did equality start? Was it like in America, for instance? The inequality start with slavery? Like, it seems like an obvious start, right? People going, and bringing all these people, but then of course you hear, oh no, they had slavery even before that. Granted, once again, that's a different type of slavery because before it was, I want like, and people hate to admit this, but there's different levels to slavery, right? Just like there's different levels with weapons, right? Once I said this before, but it needs to be said again. If you have a hand grenade and an atomic bomb, those are different types of weapons. Yes, they're both bad, right? They both can kill people, but you're not going to say a hand grenade is just as bad as an atomic bomb. It doesn't make logical sense. The same thing goes for slavery, right? There was slavery in a lot of Africa, a lot of the Middle East and stuff like that. And a lot of those places had like and had a constitution and within it, which like in I think it was the Edo Empire, modern day Benin, with the folks like uh Mansa Musa and stuff like that, where in their constitution it said, don't be like, you're the master of the slave, but you're not the stone on their neck, right? Don't abuse your slaves, basically. So they had some level of knowledge that yes, you had slaves, but it's not like they were non-human, right? So you couldn't just treat them any sort of way. You couldn't do some crazy stuff, right? But with this transatlantic slave trade, that created chattel slavery or cattle slavery, however you say that, right? Chattel, I don't know. Where they actually dehumanize people, where you say these people are not human, right? and that created in America a lot of the problems that we have today in terms of people looking at Black people or people of color and seeing them as less than, because that is the foundation of this country. And that's very important to realize, because if you're trying to get down to the core solution of a problem, you can't start with the symptoms. You can't look at the symptoms and be like, oh yes, that's how it started, that's the problem, that's how you solve. You can't, it doesn't make sense. Like, again, the doctor analogy, which I pointed out before, like, if you have symptoms of if somebody's exhibiting symptoms of it, if you just cure those symptoms, they almost all surely will still have the core issue, and those symptoms will just pop up again, right? So if you want to solve the problem, if you want to cure the solution, you have to get down deep. You need to figure out the first principles, right? The core thing that's going on here. So yeah, all that to say that, you know, even though slavery seems like one of the biggest, causes of inequality in America, it's not the cause, right? It is a big cause, but it's not the cause. If you look even deeper, You realize not only were there different slaves, across for thousands, for probably like thousands of years, but there's a huge elitism problem where you have this, the rich and the poor, you eat the rich, and all that was a problem for a long time, right? Far before capitalism. So once again, you have to get down to the core issue. A lot of people like to say, "Oh, capitalism is a problem," right? As soon as capitalism, thing comes up, that's when all this inequality. No, inequality, the elites have existed before capitalism was ever an idea, before money, before currency itself was even an idea. You still had elites, right? You still had people who were above the masses and who had a higher privileges and were able to force their power upon other people. Okay. So once again, if you're trying to solve for inequality, you have to go deeper. So where did this start? Turns out it starts with agriculture. Because before that, we do not see any any inequality. Before that, you don't see, you know, um, a certain people having more power or more stuff than everybody else. Turns out in hunter-gatherer cultures, there was they were more egalitarian. They had far more, equal say. Men and women, kids and elders. Yes, elders tend to have more respect because they had more experience and all this other stuff, but it's not like they made all the decisions for the group, And I think that played a large part in their success for such a long time and in their peace. So, but turns out when we created food production, when you were able to, grow crops or become pastoralists or domesticate animals, all of that, right, created an inequality because now a certain amount of people could hoard together these resources and become more powerful than other people. Again, I talked about this in the last episode, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but that's what I mean by going deep into it. So by going to that level, we can realize now that inequality is not a fundamental issue. With that's another problem, right? Like if you don't go deep, you just assume, oh, humans are always greedy, humans are always, that's just human, that's just human nature, greed. You hear that all the time, right? That's a fallacy, because once again, for hundreds of thousands of years, we had these hunter-gatherer cultures that were just fine. Most of them, most all of them were egalitarian, right? They figured out how to share, how to be altruistic. It was a cure. It was a key element of their society, right? They taught it to their young at an early 2 weeks. 2 weeks, they started teaching how to share and how to make decisions. So it's not a fundamental human aspect. It's not a fundamental human, issue. So when I see this, I realize that, oh wow, we need to be looking at food production, or rather, because again, it's we've built upon this society of food production, of hoarding resources. It's now a fundamental aspect of our society. However, it's not a fundamental aspect of being human, and that's a big aspect to me, because now that means that this is not irreversible, right? At least in terms of the mental characteristics. And you can see that too, because now we constantly are trying to decentralize. We are constantly trying to, you know, share the resources. We have these socialist, movements, communism, all that stuff, right? You have to wonder, why do we keep coming up with these ideas? It's because that is the fundamental aspect of being human. It's sharing. It's realizing that, if you have something and somebody doesn't have something, you give them, right? You help them out. This is that is the fundamental aspect of being human. It's not greed. That's very important to realize. Wow, it's 40 minutes. Probably wrap it up. Uh I'd be getting in here. But shoot, where was I even going with all this? Yeah. So when I think about my business, I'm thinking about how do I replicate some of those aspects of hunter-gatherer cultures that I can replicate, right? And I'm thinking there's different aspects I want to replicate. Number one is definitely that altruistic thing. Where I'm thinking that um instead of having different salaries for each person, and where you can go up the ladder in order to get paid more, instead, I know this is very radical. Stick with me here, but instead you equally dispense the revenue of the business to all individuals working there. Again, to be like, what? Communism? It's not communism. It's fundamental human. It's fundamentally human. It's altruism, egoistic altruism at its best, right? Realizing that what's best for you is also what's best for the community, or what's best for the community is what's best for you, right? Is realizing that sharing is caring, is a success, right? Sharing is caring, is success. Is realizing that, the more you share and the more other people have around you, the more your life will be good too. Because now other people don't have to, if other people are not worried about where they're going to get food or this, that, and the other, they're not going to be thinking about, oh, I need to steal from you, or let me knock this person out and do whatever, have my way with them. Like, it's just a lot of the issues that we have today comes from our environment. That's another thing that many of us don't realize. Just like any other animal, we are dependent on our environment. And it goes above environmental determinism, because we change our environment based on our behavior, and the environment, when in turn, changes our behavior. So it's a cycle, right? So when I'm thinking about my business, and you look at any business, right? Once you have that level of progress, of people needing to show off in order to get paid more, then you have this issue of politics. You have this issue of bureaucracy, where people are going to little cliques and trying to, figure out how to, kiss up to the manager, or, have their inner circles of, this. I don't have to explain it. Many of us see this in our, if you ever worked in corporate America, or really almost any job, at school, right? It's the same thing. Almost any social structure where you have some level of elitism, or some level of social progress. I don't like to use the term progress because it's not really progressive. We like to call it that because we've been indoctrinated to thinking that's a good thing. But any level of social climbing, of trying to get above others, of trying to get more than others, right? In any group, any environment where that is true, you will also have politics. You will also have bureaucracy. You will also have backstabbing and corruption, and all these problems. It comes part and parcel with that environment. So when I'm thinking of building my business, I'm thinking like, I don't want to work in an environment where I have to worry about politics, where I have to worry about, all this other bullcrap. So what kind of environment can I create where I don't have to worry about that? Is that unrealistic? Turns out no, because that's, once again, that's what humans have been doing for hundreds of thousands of years. They going out and hunt and gather food, bring it to the community, and share it with everybody, right? There's no ownership of, oh, I brought this in, that means I can get first dibs, or no. There was no need for that. There was no need. No. So if that worked for them for a long time, I think that could work for me. That's one of the things I can bring over. Another idea, and I'm gonna try to wrap this up. This is actually why I started this podcast, because today, I started doing this, but I realized that I have this small little cup of water, right? It takes me about an hour and a half to drink it. like sip by sip if I'm, working and stuff like that. And then I have to get up and go get some more water, right? If I try to over optimize and have a big jug of water instead, right? Or drink coffee or have a bunch of water bottles set up over here or something like that, right? If I try to over engineer and optimize my workplace so I never have to get up and get some more water, what happens? Productivity actually falls. And we see this, there's also a lot of science showing this, that people need breaks, that you have an ultradian rhythm of roughly 90 minutes where your body naturally focuses, where your body naturally has this energy cycle, right? And if you try to game that, or if you try to break out of that, or whatever, you actually lose focus, you lose productivity, because you're trying to fight against millions of years of evolution. Okay, you're not gonna win with your little coffee, right? It's gonna hit you one way or another. It's gonna get its due. Okay, so hunter-gatherer cultures, they only worked for maybe 2.5 hours of where they go out and then hunt or go out and get food, right? They measured this. And then at the site, in their community, they had an additional maybe 4 to 5 hours of prep work, of cooking and all this other stuff. And during that time, it's not like they were working like full time even then, right? Because they normally took breaks. They normally, when you're going out to get food from the environment, you're not literally like focused on this specific thing, right? You have, if you're following tracks, and this is theorizing here. Part of it is from what I've read. Part of it is from logic. Part of it is from playing games. But if you're following tracks, you're not going to be staring at the tracks like 100% for 2 hours, right? You're going to be looking at these tracks. You're going to be looking around the environment to see if you can hear, see if you can see what's going on and stuff like that. And I haven't hunted, I have lived in like I lived in this place where we have 15 acres of land. I don't know how my grandfather somehow got this place, but it wasn't a great place. It was very run down. We had to do a lot of improvements there. But anyways, it was there that I used to try to chase around deer and rabbits and stuff like that. So I do have some realistic interpretation of this. Even though I didn't hunt them, I try to follow them. I try to make it a game. But like when you're doing that, you can't like just look there forever. Like you have to, because not only do you lose someone that lose tracks, sometimes, but you also have to be cognizant of the environment around you, right? So you're looking up, you're looking around and trying to see what's going on and stuff like that. Maybe you're talking with other folks. Maybe they're looking and stuff like that. And likewise, when you're working, you can't just be focused and typing around and stuff like that. Not only is this unhealthy for your mind, but it's also unhealthy for your body, because once again, we evolved to move around, to physically move, right? And even though we had these last 10,000 years of increasingly more and more sedentary lifestyle, 10,000 years is just a smidget of 100,000 of 200, 300,000 years of being human, Homo sapiens, and 2 million years of being a Homo erectus, of being a two-limbed creature, right? So once again, you're fighting against that natural evolution of your body needing to move around, lose it or use it. If you don't move your muscles around, you begin to atrophy. That's how you get carpal tunnel, you get joint problems, you get muscle degradation, you get body fat and all this other stuff, right? Heart disease, tons of stuff comes from this sedentary lifestyle. So when I was talking about with my water, I realized that it's a good thing that I have to get up and get this water, because that forces me to get up, walk around, and take my head out of the thing I'm working on, the designs I'm working on. And once again, research shows that when you go out and walk or something like that, and think about something else, that actually allows your brain to process things, because your brain processes things in the background, not in the foreground. It's your short term memory that is, focusing a little bit, and it can only focus on a little bit at a time. You have to kick that back into long-term memory. You have to take a break in order for your brain to process things and to make connections and all this other stuff. So when you take that break, that quick 2, 5, 10 minute break or whatever, that allows your brain to think about, oh wow, right, this was working. And then when you sit back down, you go, oh wow, that's it, right? I can fix this problem I've been dealing with. I've experienced that myself with coding, with design, with operations, with all this other stuff I've worked on, and a number of people have also experienced this. And once again, the research shows the same thing. So to bring all the way back to my business, I'm thinking about how can I implement that into the structure of the business, the structure of when we focus for work. Like, how can I create an environment in my business where we only do like 90 minutes at a time of focus work, and within that time you still have some regular breaks. People can, if we're working remotely, what does that look like? If we're working physically together, in the same place, what does that look like? Is those types of things that I'm thinking about, so I can bring millions of years, hundreds of thousands of years of evolutionary, habits and successful behaviors into the work, so that we can have truly a long lived, successful, and self-fulfilling, self-actualized environment. That's what I think about. That's what I try to, take my time to figure out. And I know a lot of it is like maybe just me overthinking. And that's fine, because that's the joy is of me being able to create my business, because it is my business, okay? And I don't say that from an ownership standpoint. I say that from an accountability standpoint, from the fact that I'm not trying to do something where I'm not accountable to my own behaviors, right? I don't want to create something where I'm having all these consequences, where people working there are not feeling like good. People are miserable there, where the products and services that we create are making a negative impact on the environment around us, whether that's a social environment or the physical environment or the economic, right? I want to make sure that the ecosystem that I'm creating here, that I'm getting into here, is going to be 100% towards the ideal future I want to live in. And that's why I think it's important to take my time. So yeah, ooh, that was fun. Hope I explained everything well enough. And it's just interesting, man. There's so much stuff to learn about humans and humanity and society and nature in general and all this other stuff. And I'm just really fortunate and excited to implement the stuff, to do that learning, and to make moves. So yeah, if you're interested in talking about this and learning with me or anything like that, hit me up. Once again, as always, it's at Elijah Claude, ElijahClaude, on every platform, just about. Go in the comments, or make a reply if you're listening to this on podcasts. On Anchor, I believe you can make like little audio replies and stuff like that. I think you can message me on Anchor. But wherever you listen to this, whenever you listen to us, reach out to me. I love to talk. I'm always open to some good conversations, some good discussions, and let's figure out how to build a better future together. More delightful future, as my other podcast is. So yeah, thanks as always, and have a great day. Bye bye. I have this other screen, by the way. It's a really big screen. My mentor gave it to me, so shout out to Ube. See y'all. Bye bye.